All right, for a look at the forecast, let's bring in CBS News weather and climate change contributor Jeff Berardelli. Good to see you.
Good to be here.
So, Jeff, conditions in California, what are they looking like this weekend?
So I think tomorrow's wind event is probably going to be the worst of the season so far, maybe historic. I mean, legitimately talking about wind gusts over 80 miles an hour, especially on the higher hills and especially in those canyons as the wind kind of winds in and out of those canyons. So take a look at the watches and warnings that we have out. Where you see the purple shading, that's a high wind warning. That is a lot of the area and a lot of Northern California under a red flag warning. For the worst of it starting later tonight as the wind starts to crank up during the day tomorrow, and then straight through at least Monday morning is when the worst winds are likely to be. So this is a fairly historic wind event, and fires are not totally under control yet. And the wind's going to start tonight, so we don't have much time.
What's really interesting is we were talking about this in our editorial meetings last night, that this was going to happen over the weekend.
Yeah.
I mean, the forecasting for this historic event is turning out to be pretty solid. So how long do you expect it to last? That's the other question.
At least through Monday. Take a look at this right here. This is the reason why the winds are so strong. They blow from the Intermountain West, so from essentially desert regions of the Intermountain West across the Sierra Nevada, and they accelerate downward. They go into the valleys. That's compressional heating. It's kind of like rubbing your hands together. It actually warms the air. It dries it out. It evaporates it, and it makes it, almost like a desert. So everything becomes extremely, dry and brittle, and that can cause any sparks that kind of light, any fires that light, to be out of control because these winds are so strong. You can see these winds are blowing at 60, 70, 80 miles an hour in gusts. So that's the phenomena that we see all across California and why fires can be so bad. So this is the timeline. Notice today, not quite as breezy, but once that front passes tonight, notice those winds cranking up. So in the foothills of Sierra Nevada, we're going to see wind gusts to at least 70, maybe 80 miles an hour. Same thing to the north of San Francisco, so Santa Rosa, some of the same areas that have seen, some of the worst fire conditions over the past couple of years. And then it's going to all slide down the state. It won't be as bad in Southern California, but even there, 60, 70 mile an hour wind gusts are possible. And by the way, some of the driest air we've ever seen, near record dry air is heading into California as well. This is fire season. And, this is a bad one, or this has not been a bad one yet, but it's about to get bad, unfortunately, because of these conditions. So I wanted to bring this up to kind of put it into perspective for you. Because the climate has warmed, the western fire risk has increased. So, first of all, the western U.S. fire season is about 2 to 3 months longer than it was just about 2-3 decades ago. So it's almost all year round now. The area burned has doubled since the 1970s, and that's only from one paper. I saw a more recent paper which actually says that the area burned has quadrupled since the 1970s. That's how much more area burned we have. The reason is it's warmer. We talked about it. It dries out the vegetation, makes it flammable. But it's not just climate change, right? It's also that we're building in areas that are much more fire prone. And also we're trying to stop these fires from happening. And by doing so, more fuel builds up. And eventually when it does burn, it really burns. So it's a complicating factor. It's not just climate change. It's not just forest management. It's not just that we build in vulnerable areas. It's all of those things together that's causing this. We're calling it the expanding bullseye because we are building ourselves into places that typically, we did not live before.
Really fascinating. Other parts of the country will also see heavy rain and some possible flash flooding today. Tell us about that.
So we briefly, 6 hours last night, and you may have missed it, we had Tropical Storm Olga, which formed in the Gulf of Mexico. It came and it went almost immediately. It got absorbed into a cold front. That's the cold front across the southeast. That's going to move into the Great Lakes soon, and heavy rain, Ohio Valley, Great Lakes overnight tonight. Then it starts to move into the northeast tomorrow morning, into tomorrow afternoon, and it's not going to be nice once it does so. Heads through D.C., Philly, New York, showers, thunderstorms. The rain could be heavy at times. Kind of a miserable afternoon here in New York City, but all the way up to Boston and all the way down to Philly, and maybe for at least a few hours in places like D.C. So it's kind of a tale of two different parts of the country. Extraordinarily dry in the west, and it looks like real rainy in the east.
All right, Jeff Berardelli, always great to have you. Thank you.